The silence arrived before I understood what it meant. I had been king of Fenmark for 11 years. In that time I had sat through 4 mate rites, 2 alliance feasts, and more formal ceremony than I care to count. And I had learned the particular texture of a crowded hall, the layered noise of 200 wolves in a confined space, the candle heat rising to the vaulted stone, the specific pitch of voices performing courtesy rather than meaning it. I knew what a full hall sounded like. I had stopped hearing it years ago. The silence that arrived on the 4th night of the winter mate rite was not that kind. It did not come from the room going quiet. The room was loud. The candidates' table ran the full length of the west wall, and the court of Fenmark filled the benches beyond it, and the hearth fire snapped and leapt in its iron grate, and threw amber light across 40 faces, all of them animated and speaking and watching me, with the careful attention of people who knew the evening mattered. The room was as full of sound as it had been all week. The silence came from inside my chest, and it arrived while I was looking at a woman I had not noticed entering the room. She was at the east end of the fire grate, near the service arch. She wore the sand-gray linen of the kitchen staff, long-sleeved, plain-collared, the cut of a working woman rather than a candidate. She was not at the candidate table. She was not seated at all. She stood with a copper pitcher in both hands, and she was refilling the goblet of the candidate nearest the arch, and her attention was entirely on the task, not on me, not on the room, not on the careful social architecture of the evening. Her dark hair was pinned simply. Her gown covered her to the wrists and throat. There was nothing remarkable about her except that something in the room, some quality of the air where she stood, had gone entirely unexpectedly quiet. My wolf had been restless for 3 days. He was a gray animal, large and old in the way that counted, and he did not trouble me often. But since the first candidate had arrived at Fenmark's gate 4 days ago, he had paced and turned and settled and risen again, with a low, dissatisfied hum that I had been unable to account for. I had assumed it was the disruption of routine, the hold filled with strangers, the ceremonial fires lit in every passage, the formal protocols my steward Aldrich laid out each morning like a map of territory I was obliged to walk. It was a disorienting week for both of us. He was not pacing now. He had gone as still as I had, and I realized, in the same moment, that his attention and mine were pointed in precisely the same direction. I looked at the woman at the fire grate for perhaps 3 full seconds. Then I looked at my hand, resting on the arm of the carved chair at the head of the table. The inside of my wrist had begun to warm, not the warmth of the fire. I was 20 feet from the grate, something that came from the skin outward, a heat with a direction to it, the way a compass needle has a direction even when it is lying still. I looked back at the woman. She had finished refilling the goblet and was moving down the line, unhurried, head down in the careful way of staff at a formal event. Present, functional, trying very hard not to be noticed. I set down the cup I had been holding. Eldrick of the court, my steward, Aldrich's brother, a thorough and loyal man who had managed the ceremony arrangements for all 4 mate rites, was at my elbow in the next moment. He leaned to speak at a register below the room's noise. My king, the second movement of the evening, the individual presentations, is ready to begin whenever you give the signal. Who is the woman at the east fire? I said. Eldrick followed my gaze and went briefly still in a different way, the stillness of a man who has been asked a question he was hoping not to be asked. At the service arch, my king. At the fire grate, I said. With the copper pitcher. A short pause. She is on the evening staff, my king, for the service. I waited. Her name is Wren, Eldrick said, and then stopped, and I could hear in that stopping the shape of something unsaid. Eldrick, I said. He exhaled quietly. She arrived at Fenmark 3 days ago as a candidate, my king. She had the appropriate invitation and the appropriate credentials. She came from the Keswick border holding, trained as a healer's apprentice, the daughter of the pack's lorekeeper. She was on the formal candidate register. He paused again. On the second morning, she was removed from the register and assigned to the evening service staff, at the instruction of my lord's mate right council. My wolf stirred. At whose instruction specifically? I said. Eldrick said nothing for a long moment. Then, with the careful evenness of a man choosing his words inside a moving cart, the instruction came from Lady Mirette of Ashfen, my king, as the presiding coordinator for the mate rights social arrangements. She had the authority to adjust the staff roster, The council deferred to her. Lady Meret of Ashfen was seated 4 chairs down the head table from me, at the position of highest honor among the assembled court. She was the lead candidate's aunt and the most politically significant figure attending the rite. She was also, I understood in the next half-second, the person who had dressed my fated mate in kitchen linen and put a copper pitcher in her hands. My wolf was no longer still. He had risen to his feet inside me in the way he almost never did, not with aggression, not with the surge of a fight, but with the slow, thorough settling of an animal that has at last found the ground it was looking for and intends to stand on it until the world rearranges itself accordingly. The warmth on my wrist had deepened to a pulse. I pushed back from the table and stood. The room went quiet in the way a full room goes quiet when the king stands unexpectedly, not all at once, but in a wave, conversation dropping, goblets lowering, 40 pairs of eyes turning to the head of the hall. Even the fire seemed to pull back for a moment. The woman at the east fire grate had looked up. She was watching me, the way someone watches a thing they have not quite understood yet. Level, careful, not afraid. She had set the copper pitcher against the wall of the service arch. Her hands were at her sides. Her chin was up. She had very dark eyes and a composed face that told me, even from 20 feet, that she had spent the last 3 days being very careful not to let it show that she was angry. I walked the length of the head table, and then down the aisle between the candidate table and the court benches, and across the open floor of the hall to the east fire. No one spoke. I stopped 3 feet from her. Her eyes were level with my chin. She was not short, and she did not flinch, and she did not look down. "Wren of Keswick," I said. "My king," she said. Her voice was even. It had a quality I had not expected from the set of the room. A quietness that was not the quietness of intimidation, but of someone who has decided that if a thing must be gotten through, it is best gotten through with as little noise as possible. "You arrived as a candidate," I said. "I did, my king. And you were assigned to the service staff on the second morning." Her jaw tightened, just slightly. "I was reassigned, my king." "Yes. Did you object?" Something moved across her face, not quite amusement, not quite sorrow, something between them, worn smooth and tired. I was informed it was a clerical adjustment and that my place on the register had been mistakenly included due to an administrative error in the Keswick invitation list. A breath. I did not believe it was an error, but I did not think it would help to say so. "And so you served," I said. "I served," she said. "It was that, or return to Keswick, and I had come a long way, my king, and I thought it might be worth staying to see how the rite concluded." My wolf exhaled, a slow, long release, like something that had been braced for a long time discovering it no longer had to brace. The warmth on my wrist was no longer a warmth, it was a light. I did not need to look to know it. I could feel it against the inside of my sleeve, the mate mark, the bond that had waited through 11 years and 4 mate rights and more diplomatic patience than I had known I possessed, burning now with the particular clarity of a thing that has been certain for a very long time and is only now being acknowledged. I turned my left wrist over and pushed back the sleeve. The hall inhaled. The mark was 2 wolves, etched in silver light against my skin, their flanks curved toward each other, sides nearly touching, as if they had been reaching across a very long distance and had only just arrived. The light pulsed twice, and then steadied. I looked at Wren. She was looking at her own left wrist. She had not turned it over yet. She was holding it slightly away from her body with the stillness of someone who already knows what she will find and is taking a single moment before she confirms it. Then she turned it. The same silver light, the same 2 wolves, the same curve of one toward the other, the same quiet pulse, and then steadiness. She looked at it for a long moment. Then she looked at me. "Oh," she said, very quietly. And then, after a pause that contained several things I could not name, I thought it might be something like this. "Did you?" I said. "I came to Fenmark as a healer's apprentice 3 years ago," she said, "with my teacher, Dava of the Keswick Lore House. We were called for a wolf in the hold's east wing, a fever that hadn't broken. We stayed 4 days. A pause. On the last morning, when we left through the gate yard, 7 of the hold's wolves came out of the kennel and lined up along the fence and watched me go. They didn't make a sound. They just watched." She looked at the mark on her wrist. Dava said nothing at the time. On the road home, she told me that the Hold's wolves hadn't come to the gate yard for anyone in 30 years. She said it was probably nothing. A faint, very dry breath. I thought it was probably something. I thought about my wolves at the gate yard, 3 years ago. I had not been there. I had heard from the kennel master that the pack had been unsettled for 4 days during the healer's visit, and had gone quiet when the visitors left, and I had attributed it to the disruption of strangers in the Hold, and thought no more of it. 3 years. She had carried the question for 3 years, and she had come to Fenmark's mate right and been stripped of her candidacy, and put in kitchen linen, and she had served without a word, and watched for how the rite concluded. I turned to the hall. 200 wolves, in a silence I had not heard in 11 years of this Hold. The candidate table, the court benches, the fire, all of it held. Lady Marette of Ashfen was very still at the head table, with the controlled expression of someone calculating the distance between where they are and where they intended to be. My steward Aldrich, not Eldrick, but Aldrich himself, who had served my father before me and knew every room of Fenmark by the sound of its silences, was standing at the far wall with his hands folded in front of him, and an expression that I recognized as the expression of a man who has been waiting for a particular event for some time and finds it arrives with the exact timing he had expected. I addressed the hall. "This mate rite is concluded," I said. "The bond of Fenmark has declared itself, and it has declared it here, on this floor, in this firelight, before every witness in this room. The Hold's mark has found its Luna." I let the room sit with that for a moment. I will ask the court to witness, and the court will witness accurately and fully, including the manner in which the Luna of Fenmark was dressed this evening, and the reason for it. No one moved. "Lady Marette," I said. Marit of Ashfen raised her chin with the practiced composure of a woman who had prepared for a variety of outcomes. "You will receive every courtesy due a guest of Fenmark," I said. "Your peace in the Ashfen alliance will be honored and the treaty terms respected. You will also, before you leave this Hold, apologize to Wren of Keswick, in this hall and in front of the same witnesses who saw her serve tonight. That is not a courtesy. It is a condition." A pause. Merritt's face did not change. Then she inclined her head, very slightly. It was not a kneeling. It was the incline of a woman who has lost the field and knows it, and intends to manage the withdrawal well. I did not need more from her than that. I turned back to Wren. She was watching me with the same level attention she had given me from the moment I crossed the hall. Composed, careful, not performing anything. The mark on her wrist had steadied to a low, warm light. The 2 wolves were clear and still. "I would like to ask you to stand beside me," I said. "Not take your place. Not come to the head of the hall. Not assume the office I am offering. I would like to ask." She looked at me for a moment that was long enough to matter. "I have been standing," she said, "for 3 days, in various configurations." I held her gaze. "Yes," she said, "I'll stand beside you." I removed the mark cord from my wrist, the thin length of braided silver that Fenmark's Lunas had worn for 300 years, worn last by my grandmother before her death, kept in the keep's lore room ever since, and brought out for 4 mate rites without once being given, and I held it out to her. She looked at it, then she extended her marked wrist, and I laid the cord across it, and the wolves on the inside of her skin brightened for a moment and then settled. The hall went to its knees. It did not go gracefully or uniformly. It went the way 200 wolves go to their knees when something has happened that is larger than protocol. The candidates first, then the court, then the servers along the walls, then even Eldrick, who was a practical man and needed a moment to decide, and then went down with the quiet dignity of someone who has reached a decision and intends to honor it. The fire threw light across 200 bowed heads. The stones of the hall floor absorbed the sound of 200 knees meeting them. Wren stood. She did not kneel. She did not need to. She was not a woman who knelt at moments that called for standing, and this moment called for standing, and she understood that without being told. I stood beside her, and we faced the hall together. "Get up," I said, after a moment, to the room. "I want supper." Somewhere in the court benches, someone laughed, a short, genuine, startled laugh that broke the formal quiet and let the air back in. And then the hall began to move, rising and murmuring and reorganizing itself around a new center, the way a room does when it has found what it was arranged for all along. Marit of Ashven rose with the others. She crossed the floor without being summoned. I credited her for that. And she stopped 2 paces in front of Ren and she said, in a voice that was not loud and was not soft but was precisely calibrated to be heard by everyone near enough to matter. I owe you an apology. What I arranged was a cruelty dressed as an administrative convenience, and I knew it was so when I arranged it. I am sorry for it. Ren looked at her for a moment. There was no performance in it, no savoring the reversal, no coldness, no theatrical generosity. She looked at Merit the way she looked at most things, directly and with the attention of someone trying to understand accurately. Thank you, Ren said. I accept that. Merit inclined her head again, more fully this time, and walked back to the head table, and that was all. No speech, no elaboration. The thing was done. I had the sense, watching it, that Ren had given Merit exactly the response that required the least from both of them, and settled the account most cleanly, and that this was intentional, and that it was one of many things I was going to spend a long time learning to recognize as characteristic of her. Aldrich appeared at my elbow. I'll have the candidate accommodations reassigned, he said, at his usual quiet register. She'll have the East Suite, I said. Of course. A pause. I should tell you, my king, that the Eastern Suite was already prepared for the leading candidate, Lady Merit's niece. I'm sure she'll be comfortable in the South Wing, I said. It has a pleasant view. Aldrich allowed himself a brief expression of private satisfaction. It does, my king. The South Wing is very pleasant this time of year. He went to organize the reassignments, and I turned back to Ren. She was looking at the mark cord on her wrist. She turned her arm slowly in the firelight and watched the silver of it move. She had the focused attention of a healer examining something, not an emotional attention but a technical one, as if she were cataloging the mechanism. Does it do that often? She asked, meaning the light. Less than it did an hour ago, I said. It settles. Good, she said. I've been on my feet since before noon, and I would prefer to sit at some point this evening without it being distracting. I looked at her. She looked at me. You're tired, I said. I am, she said. I have been a candidate, a servant, a candidate again, apparently a Luna, and at various points, also the person refilling the goblets of women who were placed above me on the candidate register by someone who had no right to do it. It has been a full 3 days. A breath. My king. Aldrin, I said. Not my king, Aldrin. She tested that, silently, and seemed to find it workable. Aldrin. All right. Sit down, I said. I'll have them bring the supper here. She sat, not in the ceremony chair, in the chair nearest the fire, the one that a server would use if given permission, and she sat in it with the immediate and total relief of someone setting down a weight they have carried without complaint for the better part of 3 days. And then she looked at the fire, and her composure, which had held through everything, the humiliation, the service, the mark, the hall going to its knees, shifted into something quieter and more private. Not tears, something older than tears, the particular quiet of a woman who has been standing correctly in a hard wind for a long time and has finally stepped out of it. I sat in the chair beside her. We did not speak for a moment. The hall was reorganizing around us, the candidate table clearing, the court benches rearranging, Aldrich managing the reassignments with his usual efficient dispatch. No one approached us. They gave us the fire and a circle of space and the decent respect of leaving well enough alone. The wolves at the gate yard, I said, after a time. 3 years ago. Yes, she said. I was not there, I said. I heard about it afterward and didn't understand it. You would have understood it if you'd been there, she said. They were very clear about what they thought. My wolf stirred, warmly. They were. Ren looked at the mark cord on her wrist again. I've been a healer's apprentice since I was 16. I've been in more holds and more pack territories than I can count easily, and I have never had wolves come to a gate for me before or since. I asked Dava about it again 6 months after we left, when I couldn't stop thinking about it. She told me she had looked it up in the lore records, and the last time Fenmark's gate wolves had done that was when the king's grandmother arrived for the first time. She paused. Dava is very good at telling you things in a way that gives you the information without telling you what to do with it. What did you do with it? I said. I waited, she said. I went back to Keswick and I finished my apprenticeship and I worked. When the mate right invitation arrived, Dava handed it to me without a word and then went back to her reading. A dry breath. That is also a form of telling you things. She sounds like Aldrich, I said. They would probably understand each other very well, Wren said. And then, more quietly, after a pause, I knew when I arrived and the invitation was dismissed that someone had decided I was not the right kind of candidate. I had worked out by the second morning who had decided it and approximately why. She looked at the fire. I thought about leaving. It seemed like the sensible choice. But I had spent 3 years wondering, and I am, a practical person, and it seemed foolish to come all this way and turn back without seeing whether the thing I had been wondering about for 3 years was true. A pause. It turns out it was. It was, I said. The wolves were very certain, she said. They were. She looked at me, sideways, from her chair by the fire. Are you always this brief? I'm usually more so, I said. You're making me expansive. Something moved across her face, the near thing that lived between amusement and exhaustion that I was beginning to recognize as one of her characteristic expressions. I'll take that as a compliment. It is one, I said. She looked at the fire again. She was quiet for a long moment, and I let her be quiet, because she had earned silence, and I had 11 years of practice at sitting still in a large dark hall, and I found I did not mind the quiet as much as usual. I found, in fact, that the quiet was considerably better than it had been an hour ago. The particular quality of the silence in my chest, the one that had arrived before I understood what it meant, had not lifted. It had deepened into something that felt less like absence and more like presence. The kind of quiet a room gets when the thing it was arranged for has finally arrived. The supper came. Aldrich managed it with his usual impeccable invisibility. Plates set without interrupting, goblets refilled, a low fire stoked higher and then left alone. The hall continued its quiet reorganization around us. Wren ate with the focused attention of someone genuinely hungry. She did not perform delicacy or decorum. She ate the way a healer eats after a long shift, purposefully, without apology, with the particular appreciation of a person who has learned not to take a hot meal for granted. I found this admirable. Tell me about Keswick, I said. She looked up. What about it? Anything, I said. I want to hear how you talk when you're not navigating something difficult. She considered that for a moment. Then she told me about Keswick, the border-holding, small and northern and perpetually under-resourced, the lore house where she had trained, the wolves of the Keswick pack who were brave and overworked and deeply suspicious of anything new until they decided it was trustworthy and then devoted to it entirely. She told me about Dava, her teacher, 80 years old and still reading by firelight at midnight, still making the 2-hour walk to the far settlement twice a week because there was no one else to do it. She told me about the cases she had managed herself this past year, the fever in the East Pack, the bone break in a young wolf's shoulder that no one had properly set, the old wolf who had been going deaf and thought he was losing his mind, until Wren figured out it was a grass seed in the ear canal and cleared it in 3 minutes. She told me about the particular quality of a Keswick winter, colder than most northern holds, with a wind that came off the high pass and smelled like stone and old snow, and about the way the wolves there howled at first light, a low, mournful sound that she had hated when she first arrived, and now found she missed when she was away. She talked the way she stood, directly, without decoration, with the calm attention to detail of a person who has learned that the details are usually where the important things are hiding. I listened. I asked questions. The fire burned lower and was stoked again. Somewhere in the second hour, I noticed that the tension she had carried since I crossed the hall, the specific held quality of a woman managing a difficult situation with great care, had eased, not disappeared. She was not a person who became unguarded easily, and 3 days of being carefully managed by people with bad intentions had left a mark that one evening would not entirely clear. But the held quality had softened, and she was looking at the fire instead of at the exits, and when I asked her a question, she answered it without first calculating whether the answer was safe. I thought about the woman I had watched from the head of the table, moving along the fire grate with a copper pitcher, head down, managing the indignity of being put in kitchen linen in front of a hall full of people who knew she shouldn't be wearing it, not breaking, not making it into anything larger than it was, not crying, not demanding, not appealing to anyone for correction, just waiting to see how it concluded. She had known. Some part of her had known. The Gateyard wolves had told her something 3 years ago that she had carried since, carefully, without showing it, because she was a practical woman, and she understood that a thing you have not confirmed is not yet a thing you can act on. She had arrived and the confirmation had been taken away before she could secure it, and she had picked up a copper pitcher and served and waited, and she had been right to wait. I thought, this is the woman whose wolves know her. The Hold's wolves know things about a person that the persons themselves do not always know. They know before the scent is right, before the mark burns, before the instinct has been translated into something the person can articulate. They had lined up at the gate yard 3 years ago because they knew, and I had not been there to see it, and that was a thing I would not stop being sorry about for some time. I should have been at the gate yard, I said. She looked at me. 3 years ago? Yes. A pause. You couldn't have known. No, I said, but I regret it. She looked at me for a long moment, in the particular way she had of looking at something she was trying to understand accurately. You are a very honest person, she said. For a king. Is that unusual? In my experience, she said, kings tend to be honest about some things, and very carefully silent about others. You seem to be honest about most of it. It's efficient, I said. Silence about the important things costs more than it saves. She considered that. Dava says something similar. She says the things you don't say are the ones that have to be said twice later. Dava sounds wise, I said. She is the wisest person I know, Ren said. And then, after a pause, I would like her to come to Fenmark. She's 80, and she's still walking 2 hours twice a week, and there is no reason for it except that there is no one else. I would like there to be someone else. She looked at me. Is that something that could happen? She asked it the way she asked most things, directly, without softening it first, and then waited. Yes, I said. Write to her. Tell her there is a position here if she wants it, and that she will be given whatever she needs to work well. She'll say she's too old to move, Ren said. Tell her Fenmark's lore records go back 400 years, and are in considerable disorder, and no one has the training to properly catalog them. Tell her there are 73 wolves in the Hold's East Pack, and the last thorough health survey was done 8 years ago, and there are probably 2 or 3 cases she would find interesting. Ren looked at me. Something in her face shifted into the expression of someone recalculating a thing they thought they had understood. You know your lore records are in disorder, she said. I know everything about this Hold that is in need of attention, I said. I am a practical person also. She was quiet for a moment. Then, she'll come. Good, I said. We sat with the fire. The hall was quiet now. Most of the court had retreated to their quarters. The ceremonial arrangement of the evening dissolved without formality. Aldrich had managed the exit with his usual invisible efficiency. The candles on the long table had burned low. The fire was the main light in the hall, and it threw long, warm shadows across the stone floor, and the empty benches, and the 2 chairs beside it. The other candidates, Ren said after a time. Are they all right? I looked at her. It was a disruption to the right, she said. I know it wasn't their fault. Most of them came a long way and had prepared for this. I would like to know they've been taken care of. Aldrich is managing it, I said. The formal dissolution of a mate right carries honorariums for the candidates, travel provision, formal letters of introduction, whatever arrangement is needed for the return journey. It was always accounted for as a possibility. She exhaled. Good. I waited. Lady Merritt's niece, she said, the leading candidate. She is a young woman from Ashfen, I said. She will have every provision and a letter of introduction from Fenmark that will be worth something wherever she goes next. This is not her fault either. No, Ren said, it isn't. A pause. Marit is the one who made the decision. Yes, I said. And Marit will apologize, as I said she would, and then she will go back to Ashfen, and she will be a figure of moderate embarrassment in her own territory for some time. The political architecture of the Ashfen alliance still holds. I made that clear. The personal dimension of Merit's choices is her own to manage. That seems appropriate to me. It does, Ren said. She acted with deliberate cruelty and considerable confidence that it would work. And it didn't, and she should know that. A beat. I don't wish her harm. I would just like her to know that it didn't work. She knows, I said. She was in the hall. Ren was quiet for a moment. Then, the Hold's wolves, the ones at the gate yard. Are they the same ones who were in the East Pack 3 years ago, when I came with Deva? Some of them, I said. The pack lives long. Fen, the oldest, is 17 years in the hold. She was at the gate yard that morning. Fen, she said. The gray one. Long-legged. She watched me the whole last morning, and didn't come to the fence until the very end, and then she came and put her nose through the gate rails and… She stopped. Yes, I said. I thought about that for a year, she said. She'll be glad you came back, I said. Ren looked at the mark cord on her wrist. She turned her arm in the light again, looking at it with the same focused attention as before, but quieter now. Not cataloging, something else. This is very fast, she said. I know that. I know this is a very fast evening. It is, I said. I would like to know you better before I feel as certain as the wolves apparently already are. She looked at me. Is that something you can accept? I have been waiting 11 years, I said, and I missed you at the gate yard 3 years ago. I think I can wait for you to be certain. She looked at me for a moment. I'm already fairly certain, she said. I've been fairly certain for 3 years. I would like to be completely certain, which I think requires time and conversation, and finding out whether you're a difficult person to live with. I'm told I'm quiet, I said. I noticed, she said. I find that is usually either easy or very hard to live with, and it depends entirely on what the quiet is made of. She looked at the fire. Yours seems like it might be the easier kind. I hope so, I said. We sat. The fire burned. Outside the hold, I could hear the faint sound of wolves moving in the east yard, the pack unsettled in the way it always was in the middle of a significant shift, testing the new arrangement, trying its weight. Not unhappy, curious, the way the Fenmark wolves were when something had changed and the change was good and they wanted to confirm it. I thought about what she had said, that a queen is not the one who bows the deepest. She had not said it aloud, she had only stood and not knelt, which was the same statement made without words, which is almost always the more accurate form. She was right, I had not needed her to kneel. No one in that hall had needed her to kneel. The hall had gone to its knees, and she had stood, and that was exactly the correct arrangement. The Luna of Fenmark is not the woman who performs deference. She is the woman who makes everyone else in the room understand, without explanation, what deference is actually for. The Hold's Gate wolves had known that about her 3 years ago. It had taken me until tonight. I'm going to go to bed, Ren said, and stood with the directness of a person who, having made a decision, acts on it immediately. She looked at me. Thank you for crossing the floor. It took me too long, I said. It took you the length of the hall, she said, which is the correct distance. You needed to have seen the whole thing before you moved. I stood. She looked at me for one more moment. That level, careful attention. Then she held out her left wrist, the one with the mark cord, and she turned it so the mark faced up, and she looked at it. 2 wolves, she said, sides toward each other. Yes, I said. The Hold's wolves are that way when they're at rest, she said. Flanks touching, it's the arrangement they use when they're completely certain they're safe. She looked at me. That's a good sign, I think. It is, I said. She nodded once, the brisk nod of a healer who has assessed a case and reached a conclusion she is satisfied with. Then she walked out of the hall with the same unhurried directness she had brought to the copper pitcher 3 hours ago, and I watched her go, and my wolf stood quiet in my chest, and the fire burned down to its low amber, and the hall settled into the particular silence of a place that has arrived where it was going. I called for Aldrich. He appeared from the alcove near the north door where he had been waiting with the patience of a man who has worked for kings long enough to know that certain evenings are not to be interrupted before they have finished with themselves. The East Suite is ready? I said. It has been ready since yesterday, my king, he said. I had a feeling about the gate yard this afternoon. The wolves were doing it again. He paused. The lining up. I looked at him. I thought it was worth being prepared, he said, with the mild expression of a man who is telling you the truth in a way that is technically not the same as saying, I told you so. You should have said something, I said. I felt you should arrive at it yourself, my king, he said, at the correct pace. I considered this. You are occasionally insufferable, Aldrich. Yes, my king. He paused. She is a remarkable person. She is, I said. The wolves at the gate yard were unanimous, he said. Even old Fen, who has not moved at speed in 4 years, came out at a full trot when the Keswick carriage arrived. I thought that was significant. It was, I said. I am glad you went to see, he said. I am too, I said. I walked back through the hold to my own chambers, through corridors that were quieter than they had been all week, the disruption of the mate rite already fading, the hold finding its new shape. 2 of the East Pack's wolves were sleeping in the passage outside the lorekeeper's room, which was the passage adjacent to the East Suite, which was not something they did in the ordinary way of things. I stopped and looked at them. They opened their eyes, briefly, and looked back. All right, I said, to the wolves in the passage, go to sleep. They did, or they appeared to. Old Fen's ear turned slightly in the direction of the East Suite and then settled. The younger wolf yawned, showing 12-year-old teeth, and laid its head back on its paws. I went on to my own chambers. I sat by the window for a while, looking out at the east yard in the dark. The snow had come in while we were at supper, a light, dry snow, the kind that falls without wind and settles softly and makes the world very quiet. The yard was white and still. I could see the fence where the gate wolves had lined up 3 years ago, and the gate itself, and the road beyond it. She had come a long way. She had come a long way and been stripped of her candidacy and put in kitchen linen, and she had picked up a pitcher and served and waited, and she had not knelt, not once, not to the humiliation, and not to the court, and not to the ceremony floor when the hall went down around her. She had stood and looked at the mark on her wrist with the attention of a healer and said 2 wolves, sides toward each other, like the pack at rest, and that is a good sign, I think. I pulled the sleeve of my own mark over it. The silver of it was steady. 2 wolves, flanks curved toward each other, the patient old arrangement of animals that have found the ground they were looking for and intend to stay there. Outside, the snow fell without sound. In the morning, I thought. 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 I would also write to the Keswick holding and begin the formal announcement of the mate bond to the pack territories, and I would ask Aldrich to look into the state of the lore records, because if Dava of Keswick was coming, she would want to know how long it would take to put them right, and I did not want to understate the work. And at some point in the day I would find out how she took her tea, and whether she preferred to work in the morning or the afternoon, and what the East Pack's health survey had last found, and whether there was anything in the lore room's back shelves that she would need quickly. I had 11 years of waiting to account for, and I had missed her at the gate yard, and I intended to make productive use of everything I had been given. The snow settled on the east yard fence. Old Fen's low voice drifted through the pass corridor from somewhere near the East Suite. A long, content exhale of a sound, barely a howl, the particular sound she made when the pack was at rest and everything was where it was supposed to be. I sat with that sound for a while. Then I went to sleep. In the morning, she was in the east yard with Fen before breakfast, not because she had been told where the wolves were or how to approach them, but because she had simply found them, the way she had been finding things like this all her life, by moving quietly through a space and paying attention. When I came to the window above the yard, I could see them, old Fen with her gray head under Wren's hand, and the younger wolf leaning against her knee, and 3 more of the East Pack arranged at a loose radius around her, with the easy arrangement of animals who are not performing certainty but simply feel it. She looked up and saw me at the window. She did not wave. She looked at me the way she had looked at the mark on her wrist, directly, with the attention of someone making accurate note of a thing they intend to keep. I looked back. The snow was on the ground and the light was early and clean, and the yard smelled of pine and cold air, and the held wolves of Fenmark were at rest around the woman who had come a long way to find out whether the gate yard had meant what she thought it had. It had. She had known it would. The hold had known it longer than either of us.